Alrighty, folks, I am here with Kasie Wester, and you have had a heck of a pro season so far. Why don't you fill us in on what all has happened this year for you?
Gosh, yeah. So I kicked off this season. My first show was Conquer in Maryland. That was in May. It was Mother's Day weekend. Um, it was incredible. The venue, I went with my team, and it was just like honestly the best weekend. Like the vibes were high. We stayed at the host hotel, which I actually have never done for a show. Um, which yeah, that was it just made everything so much more convenient. I don't know why I haven't done that in the past. Um, but yeah, it was great, and I ended up placing 3rd in my class. It was the first time I got to go into the overall. Um, and it was just like the coolest thing being on stage with such incredible physiques. Like I was even still I like get emotional talking about it because I'm like it was just like, I don't even know how to explain it, like, being in comparison because 'cause I'm also a judge. So, like, looking at these physiques and, like, after taking a step back, comparing myself to the other ones, I'm like, "Oh my god," like, I did stack up with them, and that's kind of how I took my whole improvement season. But we can get into that after. And then, yes, I did just have, another show at, in Lexington, Mass. It was Sully's show, the Hall of Fame. That was incredible. I ended up winning my class. I came in first, and then yeah, went into the overall, um, which again, amazing. I ended up getting second overall. Um, and that was my first time getting, the big check. So I'm still letting that sink in because it's pretty recent. So
It's so
it's a lot.
interesting. You bring up the fact that you're a judge and you were still, even though you know the criteria, still somewhat surprised at what happened for you. What do you think that is?
Well, I think for me, a lot of people don't know this. Last year was actually my first time competing ever. Um, yeah, so and it kinda took a 180 in the best way possible. So, my first show ended up going pro, and then my second show, was my first pro show last season, and I was planning on doing that show anyway, but just not as a pro because it was only, I think, like, a month and a half after. Um, but I kind of, like, stepped off that stage at that point, and my whole improvement season, like, I gave 110% every single day. So, like, coming in and looking at this as a judge, I'm always kinda surprised because I'm like, "Wow, I do stack up with these physiques," because I wasn't expecting it last year to, like, go pro. It was kind of more of like, I really wanted to do this, and I was kinda mad at myself for not doing it, like, 12 or 13 years ago, which is a whole other story. So then I finally did it, and it took the best, like, turn, I guess. So it's kind of like I don't wanna say imposter syndrome, but in a way, it's like, "Wow, I did the work, and I do belong up there," with everyone else, and it's kind of I guess that's the best way I can kind of explain it. So
Wow. So, what a great intro to your competition history. So, why don't you, for someone's this is their first time meeting Casey Wester, which parts of your story do people need to understand to make sense of who you are as an athlete and who you are in general today?
well, today, I think it's important to know that I'm a mom of 2 young boys. I'm a wife and I work full time from home. I'm a coach, I'm a judge. I wear a lot of hats. So there's a lot going on over here. Um, but I will want to say I think yeah, it was around 12 or 13 years ago. Um, I was really into bodybuilding, and I ended up getting a coach who um I I don't want to say like ruined too much, like, I don't wanna say too much, they had me doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, like not eating enough, or they didn't even have me pick a show, and I was with this person for 3 years, and this was my entry to bodybuilding, and it took years of recovery, um, but I came out on the other side and somehow found my way back to it better than ever, and even after I had kids. So, I want people to understand that your past, even with this or wherever you're coming from, it doesn't define where you're going. So, I could go on a lot more about that. I think a lot of people need to maybe do some healing before they go into bodybuilding, or they need to understand it more, or ask questions to a coach and not just trust them blindly because some might not know what's best. And that's kind of where I came from a long time ago. But I wouldn't change it because I learned a lot from that, and that's kind of where I am now. And that's why I'm so passionate about it and doing things safely.
It's so interesting. So I know you say you wouldn't change it. However, in terms of coaching, what are 3 things that you wished would have went differently 12 or 13 years ago from that coach's perspective? What do you wish would have happened?
Um, from the coach's perspective, I think they could have either had more knowledge or they could have been more upfront with me. So they it was kind of a mess. So like I didn't really know anything at that point as far as like bodybuilding. Like I was really into lifting and like I knew the basics of macros, but I just thought like I I was like 18 at this point, or I don't even think I was 18 yet. Um and I feel like I was kind of taken advantage of, like being so new to it. And yeah, I mean, they were just like they put me on like an 8 to 900 calorie diet, and this was years, and I was just like, I mean, it's supposed to be hard, right? And that was it, and I just stayed there, and then I would have these cycles, of like binging, and they're like, "Oh, well, you just put yourself 2 weeks behind." And I'm like, "Okay." And they wouldn't give me any refeeds or nothing, and this I was with this person for 3 years until I was like, "I don't even wanna do bodybuilding anymore." Um, but yeah, it took years and years of healing from that. Like, it's a vicious cycle because if you're starved, like, it's just gonna cause that, like, binge restrict, and I was doing that for, forever. So, in a lot of ways, I always say, like, bodybuilding saved me because I learned so many different things with finding another coach who then was like, "That is wrong," and she helped me through, like, the uncomfortable moments of having to heal through that because it's really, like, very psychological too. It's not just, "Oh, it's just food, like, get over it." It's not like that. So,
What are the what are sort of the things you had to unlearn from that time to heal?
that, like, you actually do need food. You can't just, like, not have it to I mean, for one, it he was kinda it was like you would need to eat nothing to lose weight, and that's not always the case. Um, you need to do more cardio to lose weight, and that's not always the case. Um, it wasn't seeing, like, food as fuel, it was seeing food as bad, and you can't have it, and I had to unlearn all of that. Like, it was, like, rewiring my whole brain to be like, "Food is fuel, you need it to grow, you need it to function." Your body needs it to actually lose weight too, lose the fat. So yeah, it was hard. And then even after what was that? I think I don't know. Even after I had my kids, I didn't even have a gym membership for like 7 years, 6 or 7 years. Um, because I was still like going through that. So, and I had some health issues I was trying to figure out, and I did end up losing a bunch of weight because I did have a lot of muscle from lifting heavy before that. Um, yeah, I'm just kinda, like, going on a tangent now, but I ended up losing a bunch of weight, and then I literally, uh, had to rebuild everything back, like, build all my muscle back, and, um, yeah, and then ended up stepping on stage finally last year. So, it's a long process, like, it's a really long journey, so
Most definitely. And so in that journey, what made you finally turn the corner and decide now is the time?
yeah, so I always kind of like, it was one of those things that was in the back of my head, um, because I, like, went through hell, for a long time, and then I was, both my kids were in preschool full time, so and I was working, and I was like, I can kind of, I think it's finally time that I can go to the gym, and so I signed up, and I had that little time for myself every day that I could, consistently go because that's a huge thing, especially in a prep. So I yeah, I was doing good there, and then I went to one of my friend's shows because she was like, "I'm gonna do a show, it's near you," and she knew, like, my passion for it from years back, and, I was just like I was there, and I was seeing everyone on stage, and I was like, "Why didn't I do this?" And I was like, I could do this." And a couple months later, I reached out and to my old coach who, like, helped me get through all the stuff from years ago, and I was like, "Yeah, let's get the ball rolling." And it was kinda like a pre-prep phase for a
Mm.
couple months, and then I finally picked a show, and the rest is, still happening now. So, yeah.
Pretty wild. So what would you say to the moms out there who have any inkling of like, I think I could do this? What do you think would push them over the edge?
I think that if you wait until it's the perfect time or you're waiting until the "you're ready" moment, it's not gonna come. You just have to do it. Like, you just have to do it. You have to do it unsure, you have to do it, like, if you're scared, if you're nervous, if you're excited, that's all a good sign. So, if you have the time and you're already consistently going to the gym, I would say maybe talk to someone else who's done it as far as, like, bodybuilding specifically, like a prep, um, because you also want it to add to your life, you don't want it to cause more stress. So if it's someone who is already struggling with the nutrition aspect of it, that's different, um, but for all the moms out there, if they're, like, considering it, I say go for it, um, because your kids also will think it's the coolest thing. So, just saying. Like, my oldest is gonna be 7 soon, and he's, like, starting to ask questions, and he's like, "Look at my muscles," both of them. They're, like, flexing in front of me and stuff. I'm like, "You have to eat vegetables soon, you know that, right?" Because 'Cause they're getting really picky, so, yeah, but I would say just go for it, but you have to make sure that the mind is right before you jump into it because it's pretty serious. It's a pretty serious thing, but it's pretty rewarding. So,
It's super funny that you mentioned that. So I have a 5 and a 6-year-old little boy,
mm,
and part of the reason that I'll be competing here in 17-ish plus months is one, I'll be 40 and I'll try my hand at the masters division. So that'll
yep,
be good. But also, they will be around 7 and 8, 6 and 7 at that point, and I want
yeah,
to have them see me do hard things. So
yeah.
how much of your motivation is centered around maybe your boys?
Well, now they're starting to see it more now, but I think when what was it, like, 2 yeah, so about 2 years ago, um, they're 5 and 7. My oldest will be 7 next week, so 5 and 7, they were 3 and 5 when I really got into it, so I think they think this is just normal now. Um, but I think it's important for them to see, like, what hard work does, if that makes sense. Because like, I wasn't raised with, like, my parents bringing me to a YMCA. You know, I have 2 different gym memberships, and one of them is the YMCA because they have childcare. So, like, school vacations, if we have to go at night or something like that, and most of the time they enjoy it. Um, but yeah, I think they see all the hard work and they're starting to ask the questions like, "Oh, like, I don't know, like, if they see me bring my container meal out or something like that, they just think it's normal now." Um, but as they get older, I'm starting to give them more information on it because I don't want them seeing food as, like, good and bad or, like, all the issues that I kinda grew up with, regarding around food, you know what I mean? So, I'm very careful there, but I'll give them little tidbits of information. Um, but yeah, we were on vacation, uh, when I just did the Hall of Fame. My husband and the kids went up the day before to Maine, and then I went up the day of the show, and so they couldn't come, and it's pretty hectic, and, like, they don't sit still, and it's a long day for them. But, like, they thought it was the coolest thing that I showed them the check, like, the big one up here. They thought it was the coolest thing, um, and they love seeing the medals. So, yeah, I hope that when they're older, they can really appreciate it, and they'll probably understand it more, but, like, not so much now because 'cause they're so little. I
Hmm.
hope that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Mm. Oh, it definitely makes sense. I mean, I think a lot more things in our life make sense in hindsight once we've had
Yeah,
time to grow and reflect on those types of things.
right.
Hmm. So you had mentioned growing up, you weren't taken to a YMCA, and you had talked about food a little bit, and there were these. I think we all pick up on these things, especially depending on what culture you're from. I'm in Appalachia, things like that. There, concepts of clean your plate, things like that. What
Yeah.
messaging did you have growing up that maybe either aided or not aided your bodybuilding journey?
Yeah, so I think it was I wanna say probably, like, freshman year of high school. Um, I mean, being, like, a female growing up, I feel like you're always told to, like, be small, and that was it. Um, and that was kind of it. So, I started figuring out it was, yeah, my freshman year of high school. I've been counting macros since then, and that might seem crazy to a lot of people, and it can, and I graduated in 2016, so, like, it's been a long time of me counting macros, and, um, I took advantage of that. Of course, I didn't really understand them at first, but growing up, it was like, yeah, I mean, there wasn't, like, as much information out there as there is now, and I remember always trying to go on, like bodybuilding.com, like the forums and stuff, like, and trying to get information that way, but also in high school, it was really hard for me, so I remember, like, not wanting to go in the lunchroom and stuff, and I would just, like, not eat throughout the day, and then when I would get home, I'd be really hungry, and I don't even really remember, like, having the binge or restrict cycle then, but it was more of, like, I was just so hungry, so I would eat a lot. And then, yeah, then I figured out what the macros were, and I just, like, wasn't eating enough, um, having a really hard time growing up. So it's kind of like a mix of all of that.
Hmm. So, if you're comfortable,
Mhm.
a lot of people go through these sort of binge and restrict cycles, especially
Yeah.
if they are new to training and things like that. What are some signs that you look for? If you were obviously you're a coach of
Yeah.
athletes, what are you looking for as a coach that are like warning signs to you?
Yeah, actually, I see this a lot. Um, a lot of times what I see is people under eating and, like, overdoing cardio or overdoing their exercise, or they're just genuinely not tracking their, their intake. But more so like red flags I would see, and this is something I go through with my assessment. Like I'll send out a questionnaire or a coachability assessment. That's pretty big too. But I want to get to know the person first because I want to make sure it's the right fit. Um, because if a coach and a client relationship, if it's not the right fit, then the client might not get the success that they want. And as a coach, you want them to. So like kind of going off there, but red flags I would, want to see like what are they doing right now during the week, right? Are they like, "Oh, I was so good. I was so good all day." And then I had like, a huge bag of chips that night. And I was like, "What do you mean you were so good all day?" Like I would ask those questions and they say, "Oh, I didn't eat anything today." That's not being so good. Like, so we would wanna talk about that. Or they're like, "Oh, I was so good all week, and then I went out over the weekend and I just like" a lot of people I'm 28, so a lot of people around my age are, like, going out and they're, like, drinking Friday, drinking Saturday, trying to recover Sunday, maybe into Monday, Tuesday. So it's like, "Oh, I was so good all week, and then I had a crazy weekend." It's like, what were you doing during the week? And then how was your weekends, and are they like that every weekend? Because that's gonna stay in you for a couple days, and then you're just doing it again, So, I do ask these questions, and I wanna know, like, what's going on because I need to get the full picture, um, to make the right adjustments and also make sure it's the right fit. So, I do ask a lot of questions. I will say I've been running into it less, but yeah, those are definitely some red flags. You want someone honest too that's gonna tell you the truth because you're not getting the truth, you don't really know what's going on either. So
No doubt. And you have to create an environment where they want to tell you the truth. Like you all have to
exactly.
be on the same side. And then I think something that I notice is people almost discount the weekend. It's just like, oh well, Monday
Yeah.
through Friday, I was solid. I was in my deficit. I was hitting my I don't know 1750 calories. Hit all my protein.
Mhm.
All right, what'd you do on the weekend? I did all that, and then I had like 8 beers, and I
Cold
had to eat after
pizza.
that, cold pizza. And they think just because it's only 2 days that's not gonna negate the other 5 days.
Right.
However, that 2,000 to 3,000 extra calories you had, that just completely wipes the
Right.
deficit. So how do you
Right.
communicate that with them?
Well, at least for me, like my clients, typically will either schedule a refeed, and I like to call it that. I don't usually call it a cheat meal or because it's not. I mean, we just had the 4th of July, right? So like some clients will say, I'd prefer structured macros for the whole day. And I'll say, okay. And like we'll set that up so they can kind of plan around it. Um, I know for me that works better a lot of times. But like my lifestyle clients, I'm like, hey, go enjoy the day, but, like, a lot of them don't really have, um like, they wanna reach their goals, like, they genuinely want to I had a couple that, like, "Oh, I'm just gonna bring my meals." I'm like, "You don't have to do that." But, like, we have that open communication or, like, if I was to run into something like that, which I have seen it quite a bit, and when I have seen this, it's more so people that aren't really looking to reach any specific, physique goals. They're just kinda like, "Well, this is what I do, and it's fine." I'm like, "Okay, okay. Is it working? Because I don't know." But it's more so, uh, like, as a coach, I just have the open communication 24/7, and my clients know that, and we kinda plan for these things, but unless it's, like, pretty close to a show or like, there's a real I don't know, if someone's birthday's coming up, like we plan around it so they can kind of have like, you know, go out for dinner or like something that they really want. I don't want to have to take away things that bring like a really high amount of joy to someone, like something important, you know? Um, but yeah, again, kind of going off there.
Mm. It's interesting. So, what difference do you notice in your lifestyle versus your contest prep clients in these moments where there are these weekends where they could possibly eat over?
Well, it's funny. So one of my one of my lifestyle clients, she actually preferred to bring her meals because she's so dialed in right now. And she's like, "No, I'm just gonna bring mine." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "You can do that." I'm like, "Please don't feel like you have to, you know." But she wanted to. So, it's fine with me. And I have them track everything. Even if I give them something, like I have all these different tabs in my tracking sheets for my clients. I have like a whole journal tab for them to put everything in at the end of the day. Um their whole meal plan and all the macros listed out, their training, everything down to the day. So it's like if they want to switch things out, they can, but they know exactly what they need to hit and when. Um so this is also an easy way for me to look at all the data, week to week. Is there trends? Even day to day, like what's going on? Did you have more fluids this day? Did it cause this? So it's easy for me to see like something like this over the weekend. That's why some clients will have, if they do have extra or they go off and they kind of like hide away. I'm like, I still need the data, because it is like it still helps me um monitor things over time because say someone does say, "Hey, in a couple months I want to, train for the show." I'm like, "Well, I could go back and see how something affected you um even a couple weeks ago." But anyway, um yeah, sorry, going off again.
No, 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 quite all right. I like it when people go off because it sends me down like these
A
little
rabbit
thought
hole.
rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And the rabbit hole I went down was so we, especially in the coaching arena, the bodybuilding arena, we love variables, right? If you can track it, you can change it.
Yep.
And I think some of those variables are great. A lot of those variables, we need them. But I'm curious, so what variables do you think that people are generally like, "Oh, that's really important," but it's not that important? And then what are some other variables that you're just like, "You wouldn't believe it, but this variable is important."
Sometimes steps are not and I say this because steps and cardio are not the same thing. So, and I will say where I find it does make a difference is if you have someone like I'll say this, I have people who work, jobs that they're on their feet all day. So I don't even have them and I tried. It's like, I'll have people, I'm like, "Please, like, you have any way? Can you track your steps? Can you do this?" And they just have no way of tracking their steps. Even people that have, desk jobs, and they probably don't get a lot of steps a day, which unfortunately means they might have to do a little bit more cardio. Um, but at the end of the day, we get the movement in. So, like, then someone who's on their feet all day and doing, like, manual labor, their steps are probably pretty high, but we don't know. So, like, if I'm making them a plan and they're not doing cardio and we're going strictly off of lifting and nutrition, I can still track that, but they're not tracking steps because, um, I don't know, what if one day they get off early and, like, the steps aren't there? Or, like, what if like, you don't know with the steps, but my point is steps are not cardio. Like, your heart rate is in a different zone. Um, they can be if you're walking fast enough, um, but it's not always the case. So, that's something that if you can't track steps, we can work around it. It might not be ideal, but I do have multiple clients that do not track steps. Um, and it's fine. I mean, they're getting results, and one of them is doing a show soon. Hopefully, another one is, but that's a different story. I'm trying. I selfishly want one of them to do a show, but we don't know. And one thing that I think is very important that people don't realize is, well, I was gonna say I'm stuck between 2 because I wanna say consistency with fluids and sleep, but I
Give
feel
me
like
both.
everyone. Okay, okay, both, yeah, because people I know sleep everyone says sleep is very important, especially as a natural athlete. That's a lot of times where we recover the most. But fluids, I've seen people like the fluctuations, especially, um, I wanna say definitely more for women, the fluctuations are so much more because women typically will have their cycles, and the hormonal shifts every month, even every week. And it's just crazy seeing it. But the fluid shifts in women specifically is just like, and it sucks for us because like the scale is like just messes with you sometimes. And I have to like tell them, I'm like, it is okay. Like it's okay. But what I mean by fluid is like one day you could be having a gallon, like 132 ounces of fluids, whether it's tea, coffee, water. I mean, it's just all of it together, just so I can kind of see what you're used to having. And then one day, if you have a ton more, did you drop weight? Did you flush out the system more? You know, did the carbs fill you out more? Like what is going on? And the scale might reflect that. So I think fluids are pretty important to have around the same amount consistently. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, that's what I would say.
What about
It's
sleep?
interesting. Sleep, yeah, because I mean, as natural athletes, especially, like that's where you recover for the most part. So, I know for me, I have technically 2 rest days. I like to lift 5 days a week. Um, and I like the split for a lot of people, especially competitors. Um, But a rest day for me is not usually a rest day because it's on weekends and I'm usually, you know, my steps are actually higher. Um, and I'm doing a lot because I'm trying to get ready for the week. We're usually doing something with the kids. We're running around. We're trying to clean up the house and, grocery shopping and like all this stuff. So it's just like super busy. So it's like not really a rest day. Um, so like sleep, go to bed, like go to bed, don't stay up late. Um, and I guess it depends on your work schedule too. So if you have like a 9 to 5 or, you know, um, yeah, just don't stay up late, go to bed. Stop
Yeah, that's
scrolling.
that is one thing. Stop doom scrolling, stop having the screen. But I'm curious, deeper into a prep, how do you help athletes conceptualize where their sleep was, where it is now, and how to best optimize given that they are going to be hungry, they are going to be tired, things like that.
Yeah, so I feel like I do a good job like preparing and talking to my clients because they kind of expect that going into this it's going to be challenging, right? Like anyone going into bodybuilding is like, okay, that is probably going to be hard. But for me, I always, you know, I don't want to like I'm not scaring them. Like I'm not like, hey, at the end of a prep like this is going to be horrible. Like I don't say that. But I'll tell them like, hey, especially the last couple weeks is going to be a really hard push, but like you can do this. And I'm here and I'll give them. I mean, it depends on someone's plan because someone might have a lot more cardio than someone else. Someone's food might be higher than someone else. Um, it's all relative, but being a coach, you're also connecting with the person. Um, you want to make sure you have that connection with them because they need to feel comfortable coming to you with like their concerns and their doubts because part of the sport is that is you're kind like when you're tired and you don't want to do it and you have to, but like sometimes you might not have someone else that like really understands it. And I mean, at least for me, I'm also living this. So like I really get it. Like I'm doing it now and I've done it in the past. So like I can kind of go through it with them in a way. Um, but it helps having that like someone there with you through it. but you just kind of have to help them through those hard times. Like, it's not forever. The food's always going to be there. Remember why you started this. Like, those type of conversations, um, they go a really long way. And it might be different for everyone. Like, someone might have one concern and someone might be, you know, dealing with something else, or something happens in life, you kinda have to pivot with them and come up with a new plan and just remind them, like, everything will be okay, like, we can figure it out together. Um, that's part of your job as a coach, so
Most definitely. And I want to back up to something you touched on earlier, and it was cycles. So for women who haven't competed before, something they may not consider is that water fluctuation around that time. So how do you help them conceptualize what their weight might do and how we want to think about weight over the period of weeks, not days?
yeah, so for this specifically, a lot of times if I have someone who wants to compete, like if they didn't pick a show yet and they don't know about, cycles or what the scale may or may not do, um, I guess it really depends on where they're at, because if they need more muscle, we're gonna need to do that first. Um, if they've if they're really so new to it, you know, I guess it just depends on where they're at. But around the cycle thing, people can fluctuate, like, they might fluctuate up to, like, 5 pounds sometimes. Uh, and I know cravings get real bad around this time. So, kind of just telling them, like, "Hey, this is not fat. Like, this scale is not telling you that you just gained, like, 3 pounds of fat overnight." Like, and I'll just kinda walk them through that, and it's just more of, like, reassuring them, like, this is kind of part of the mind game that goes with bodybuilding for women specifically, um, which is not fun. But it is part of it. So it's more of like reassuring and kind of monitoring those trends, because some clients, like I said, will have this insane fluctuation, um, once a month, and it kind of drops off quickly. Some of them it will stick around for like a week. Some of them it hits them a week prior and not at all on their actual cycle. So this is also a good way to track the data through the sheets that I have. So it's kind of different for everyone, but once you have that relationship with the client and you're seeing the trends, it gets easier. And also part of, like, my coaching is teaching them, like, "Hey, the scale isn't the end all be all. It's not telling you the whole story." Um, and kind of, like, teaching them that, and then once they get it, they get it. So, and that's really rewarding as a coach, because, kind of growing up, it was like, the scale needs to be lower, you need to eat less, you need to move more, and, like, that's not always the case, and it's just rewarding, like, when you're kind of teaching people, like, that's not actually true, you know? So,
Mhm. And I think something to sort of bookend this question and get more a bit more specific. So deeper into contest prep, whenever you have female clients, they may experience REDS or the female athlete triad. Yeah. So we're not so much concerned for low bone mineral density because we can't really measure that, but low energy availability and amenorrhea. So what has been your experience coaching people, providing education around those topics?
yeah, so I kinda just explained, like, for females, typically at the tail end of prep, a lot of times it is not uncommon to lose your cycle once you hit a low body fat percentage for you, and that's different for everyone, and I think that's important to note, because some women might keep it the whole time. Um, and another thing to note is, on peak week, sometimes depending on the peak week protocol, this happens sometimes. Is someone might lose their cycle, 2 to 3 months out, depending on how lean they get, and peak week comes and they carb up and they get their cycle, and they were not expecting it, and this has happened many times. I've seen this happen. Um, so there's a lot of factors that go into this for women, but I think just knowing that in bodybuilding, it is normal for women to lose their cycle, and sometimes it takes, I wanna say, like, around sometimes up to 2 to 3 months to get it back depending on how long you lost it for. But again, you might not lose it. That's different for everyone. Um, yeah, I think the leaner you get, the higher chance you have of losing it. Um, First time competitors, you I wanna say you probably will, but again, it's just so different for everyone. So I think talking with your coach through that is very important and just being very open. Um, I think that's probably key there. Yeah.
I mean, and that's why you have to have a good relationship with your coach. You have to be
Mhm.
comfortable enough with this person, this male or female person, to be
Right.
like, hey, this happened. I wasn't expecting this. What's
Right.
going on? And then you, as a coach, have to be able to normalize and go, yeah, sometimes that happens. And it takes X amount of time, generally speaking, post prep. And then also, it's really interesting that, I mean, you can almost like from women's physique to bikini, you can almost just with the levels of leanness differences. I bet you if someone did a study, you could
Yep.
probably predict on sort of a linear scale how lean you are and how often you tend to have a cycle variation. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious, back to supplementation. Actually, I don't think we've touched on supplementation. How do you talk about caffeine with your athletes? Because I feel like that's something I've been thinking about a lot. I've been experimenting with my own caffeine intake, and I'm just like, I need to do it less so that I can actually use it as a tool instead of
Yeah.
just like relying on it throughout my day. How do you talk about that?
Yeah. That's a good point. A lot of times I haven't run into this too much because typically, like, I mean, towards the end of prep, they'll definitely wanna be adding, another cup of coffee by the end of the day, and I'll say that's okay. Um, the thing that I worry more about is if they're taking a pre-workout, um, what is in that? And also, amino acids sometimes have caffeine in them, and I wanna look at that. It's more about how are they feeling because I don't want them to be, like, overdoing it, if that makes sense. But, um, what on the flip side of that, what I have noticed is a lot of times, especially females, will come to me and say, "I would have this many cups a day because I was so hungry, and I would supplement it with caffeine and some sort of caffeine to try to, suppress the appetite." And we kind of reversed that and we're trying to like come in and get that, fix the metabolism a little bit and increase food and kind of do like a recomposition, and they notice themselves, they're not purposely trying to, but they notice that they're not doing that anymore. So they're actually fueling correctly and not relying on caffeine because they feel like a zombie all the time. And I'm like, that's a big win. So, and that's what I love seeing. Um, so yeah, that's what I would say. I don't want them overdoing it, but um at the end of prep, if they do need that, I would just wanna look at what else are we taking in, because we don't wanna be adding any extra if you're already having way too much, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Most definitely. And again, I'm going to key in on something you said. I'm curious, how has your relationship to hunger changed over the years? And how do you help your athletes sort of change their relationship to that feeling?
Mhm. So, it is part of bodybuilding, and you do kind of want to feel and this is gonna sound really funny, especially when you're, like, first starting a prep, it's like, oh, when you go to bed, like, you wanna be a little bit hungry because like, it's working, and I think I saw this on, like, a post or something, like, one of those little memes, and I was like, "That is so true." Um, but it is true because you don't wanna be if you don't feel a little bit hungry, um not that you don't know it's moving, but, like, you wanna feel your metabolism, like, going through what you're giving it, right? So, like, and going through hunger, like, you also don't wanna be starving, though. So, like, there's a balance, and I know so since I've been, like, kind of on the other end where, like, the extreme with the starve and the binge and going through all that, and then now to competing, I'm like, I understand the difference as far as, like, okay, if I'm, like, about to pass out, like, I'm gonna have something. Like, if my body needs something, I'm gonna have it, whether it's a little bit, I wait 30 minutes and see if I'm like, "Okay, I'm good." So, I'll go through these cues with my clients, and I'm kinda teaching them the same thing. I'm like, "Hey," like, and that's something I ask them multiple times a week because I do weekly check-ins, but with most of the time it's more. Like, with my competition clients, I'll do most of the time it's 2 times a week. The closer we get to a show, it's a lot more. But I'll check in hunger cues, digestion, sleep, extra stress and, what was going on, stuff like this. So, and it all plays a factor. But hunger cues, we just have to get down to the specifics. Like, is it boredom? That's a big one. Are you actually hungry? Are you starving to the like, we don't want you starving. Are you doing too much? What's the scale doing? Is the scale moving too fast? Is it not moving at all? Because if it's not moving at all and you're saying that you're really hungry, okay, well then let's look at something else because something's not adding up here. Are we tracking
Mm,
correctly? Are we following the plan? So like there's a lot of factors that go into it. But if it's normal, just like, hey, I'm really hungry, this is hard, like, yes, it is gonna be hard. Yes, it is gonna be hard. The food is gonna be there after the show, and maybe they're due for a refeed. So, like, we just gotta see what the context is. Um, but that's also part of the job as a coach to, like, look at the whole picture, not just, "You're hungry. Okay, why don't we just give you this and you can have this, and then it's fine, and you won't be hungry for the rest of today." Because like, that could make them, fall behind a little bit in their prep. So, like, you don't wanna just tell them everything's gonna be okay and hold their hand the whole time and kinda baby them. Because as a coach, you've gotta kinda push them a little bit. So, it's a balance, and it's different for everyone. So,
most definitely. And I think so, part of it, sort of, this is the way. Bodybuilding, you're going to be hungry. That's true. That's true. And at the same time, some of the points you bring up is like, okay, well, if it is the way, let's also assess, like, what's your meal frequency like? What is the fiber distribution in those meals? Oh, you don't have any fiber.
mm,
Oh, your last meal is like 5 hours before bed. That's no good. We gotta shift that up a little bit.
right.
So yes, hungry, and also we have to check in on some of these other peripheral things to make sure that we are the right kind of hungry, if that makes sense, or if that's what you're saying. Um, Another interesting thing you bring up is sort of building in pauses, and that's something I'm always interested in because I talk about with my clients, like, before you make any decision. So this is sort of my psychology background. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and it is our job to sort of expand that space. And I think building in pauses is a beautiful thing. So how do you help your clients pause?
Yeah, so if it was like a situation, right, if they really did like a great job spacing out their meals and they're like, "Hey, I really need something else." Say they got stuck on their feet at work for like hours, right? And they need something. Um, I would say, "Okay, let's get like a quick carb. Give them a certain amount depending on them because it depends." I would say have this amount of this and, let's wait like 30 minutes and see what happens because sometimes it could do nothing. Um, and sometimes they could be like, okay, like I'm healed and that's it. And they could be on their way for the rest of the day. So it depends. It really just depends on the situation, but helping them through the pauses, it's like, let's just take a breath, like it's fine, and then we'll check back in a couple minutes. And most of the time it's in situations like that. Like if they're in an unexpected you know, job at work that ran late or they are um I don't know, say they got like a flat tire or something, but they have something in the car with them. Like situations like that, we kind of pivot. But I mean, you kind of just got to talk with them through it and say, let's, just take a breath, wait, let's see what happens. I don't want them like spinning out and like binging, right? And that's another thing as a coach, you want to be there and try to answer as soon as you can, because in a situation like that, if someone really is like they feel like they're starving and their brain is telling them like, I'm hungry, you need to find something to eat now, they might they might just go do that, and like that's going to set them back, and it didn't have to if you could just answer them. Like, you know what I mean? So that's also a big part of it, is like being there for them as soon as you can. I know it's not always possible, but um yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Well, it sounds like you as a coach, you have great communication with your clients, which I think, some coaches just kind of lack. And but you need that, especially at the tail ends of prep. So I'm curious if a competitor were if someone was getting ready to compete, what are three of the biggest things they need to have in place before you're sure they're ready to compete?
Mm. Yeah, I would say um probably someone that already works out and they understand like the basics of macros, I want to say. A good support system, and they understand that they're training for one day. This is not a sustainable look. This is for one day. Uh, and it's very rewarding, but you also have to have a plan for after. We don't have to go through the plan, but I would want someone that has that understanding, like, hey, I want to do a show, but not say like I want to look like I do a show and all the time. Does that make sense? Because I've seen that people kind of say like, "Oh, I want to get really lean and look like I compete." I'm like, you can't do that all the time though. you know, like you would not be very happy, and your body wouldn't either. Cause a lot of issues. So, I think that's a big thing. I want people to understand. I would want people to understand. Yeah, it's one day.
Fantastic. Casey, this has been a tremendous conversation. I can't believe it. 50 minutes just sort of blown by.
Oh wow, yeah.
So, where can people go to find you for your coaching services or otherwise?
My Instagram, kwest.fit. I'm on there pretty often. That's probably the best bet to reach me.
Fantastic. And I know you said you maybe wanted to wait off on this, but any vague plans for in the future for the rest of this year?
I do have some plans, but I'm not ready to share yet. So right now, I'm just taking it day by day, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Fantastic. Well, Casey, good luck with the rest of your season. I will absolutely be following, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Thanks. Me too.